Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night Grasso V Shevchenko 2. Or if I worked for the UFC creative team, it's Noche UFC Grasso versus Shevchenko 2. This was a pretty nice fight night. Cool fight night. I like these kind of fight nights where a champion fights on them. Obviously, the last few fight nights that I remember where a champion fought on them were Cejudo Dillashaw, Shevchenko versus Carmouche, and some that I might be missing another one, but those are the ones that come to my mind. These type of fight nights, I think someone mentioned in the commentary, they feel like they feel pay-per-view quality, and I think the only reason why it feels pay-per-view quality is the venue and the crowd. The crowd being just obviously pro-Mexican, it feels pay-per-view quality. But if you put this fight in the Apex, I mean, this is a dud. Respectfully, it's a absolute dud. If you put this in the Apex, it just goes to show that the Apex needs to be. I'm saying this comedically, obviously. Needs to be abolished. The Apex needs to be burned to the ground, or it just needs to be sanctioned for tough and Apex shows, and for Road to the UFCs. There's no need for the Apex to even be allowed in regular UFC roster deciding functions. Excuse me. Other than that, this card was great, but there's so much. We're gonna talk about the main event in a few minutes or so, but we have to go down. We have to go down the list of fights. First things first. There are no. It's hard for me to say this. There are no robberies. There are no robberies tonight. Only honorable mentions, and we'll get started with the first one. First honorable mention is Knutsson. I think it's Knutsson. I don't think you pronounce the K, but I'm going to say Knutsson. Knutsson versus Mann. I had this 30-27. I'm going to be referencing a bunch of people online, okay, because it's all over the place in what they like and what they don't like. But for the first thing is Knutsson versus Mann. Okay, I had this 30-27 for Knutsson. In the first round, Knutsson outstruck Mann on the feet and had to take them with ground and pound for about 2+ minutes. In the second round, Knutsson outstruck Mann on the feet, had a takedown with ground and pound to close the round. And then in round 3, Knutsson had also outstruck Mann on the feet, had 2 takedowns with ground and pound. I gave no 10-8s. Now, if you listen to the show enough, I'm pretty consistent in how I evaluate the 10-8. It has to be pretty fucking clear on who gets a 10-8. I don't think any of these rounds warranted a 10-8, but I'm not opposed to putting a 10-8 somewhere on either round, on round 2 or round 3. I'm not sure. I'd have to rewatch the fight again to decide. But we're going to go straight to the judges' scorecards, and this is where the narrative starts. This is where the theme of the night starts. 10-8s, right? Because the 10-8 ruined the main event. And Mike Bell instantly he's feeling hype. I don't know what he was watching. I don't know what he was thinking. But he felt invigorated. This fight right here set the tone. I never give honorable mentions to 10-8s because it's a subjective sort of thing, unless it's very clear. This is the one where we'll just give him an honorable mention, and that'll be the theme of the night. Honorable mention to Mike Bell. He has it 30-24 for Knutsson. He gives a 10-8 in all 3 rounds. Now, I don't think there's a 10-8 in the first. I don't think there's a 10-8 in the second, given that Knutsson was outstriking Mann on the feet for pretty much the entire round, and then at the very end of the round gets a takedown and lands heavy ground and pound. That's also not enough for a 10-8 in my book, but whatever. And then the third round, maybe you can argue a 10-8, sure. He gives a 10-8 in all 3 rounds. Honorable mention to Mike Bell. This is the start of ruining a great night. This is the start of ruining an absolutely great night. And you know what's so funny about this? if I can remember correctly, this is the same Mike Bell. Okay, that I'm gonna search it up right now. So Ankalaev versus Blachowicz. Okay, I'm gonna search up these scorecards. And if I can remember correctly, I mean, I've been doing this for a little bit, so I think I remember. No, I was wrong on that. It was someone else who gave it to... It was Derek Cleary who gave the 10-8 that fucked up the whole thing. Oh, no, it wasn't... Whatever. The point I'm making is Mike Bell set the tone tonight. He absolutely set the tone and was like, you know what? I'm feeling frisky. 10-8s everywhere. All right, we go to Saul D'Amato. He had it 30-25. He gave it 10-8 in the last 2 rounds. And then Brian Minner, he had it my scorecard 30-27. We go to the next honorable mention. And that's Cortez versus Jasudavicius. As I'm watching this, I increasingly get mad at commentary, especially DC, right? Anik mentioned, DC would love to be a judge. Terrible judging. He thinks that a takedown means you win the round. And that's just not the scenario here. I'll get into it. But I have 30-27 for Jasudavicius. I only see a 30-27. It's nuts how anyone is, again, people online, going 29-28 Jasudavicius. That's ridiculous. 29-28 Cortez is also goofy, but I'll explain in a second. You got the first round. Cortez outstrikes Jasudavicius. Pretty clear. It's a 10-9 there. You go to the second round where Cortez is outstriking Jasudavicius on the feet. Jasudavicius gets 2 takedowns. Like in quick succession, she gets 2 takedowns. Proceeds to do, I don't even think she lands more than 3 strikes on top of Cortez. She lands maybe a strike or 2 if you want to be cute, on the ground. And Cortez proceeds to then get back up on her feet. Those 2 takedowns is not enough to win her the round. She gets 2 takedowns in pretty much like a span of a minute, while also getting outstruck on the feet by Cortez. Nonsense. This is also a 10-9 for Cortez. And then you go to the third round. And Cortez outstrikes Jasudavicius again. This time, avoiding getting taken down and then outstriking Jasudavicius on the feet. 30-27 Cortez. You go to the scorecards. Mike Bell. Good scorecard. 30-27. Saul D'Amato. 30-27. And then Junior Kamijo decides those takedowns really were important for some reason. Honorable mention to Junior Kamijo. His scorecard is 29-28. He gives a 10-9 to Jasudavicius in the second round. So honorable mention to... Oh, not Junior Kamijo. I'm sorry, Jacob Montalvo. Honorable mention to Jacob Montalvo. Disagree with that scorecard. Next honorable mention is Chairez versus Lacerda. Basically, this fight ends in a no contest. Chairez had a standing guillotine, and essentially, Lacerda was okay inside the submission. His hand plops down as if it looks as though he's out, and Chris Taioni stops it way too early. At first, I was like, man, just give Taioni some grace, right? Because in this particular fight, after the fight ends, Dominic Cruz is just ragging. He wants these guys to be held accountable. He's ragging on him. And at first I'm like, dude, Dom, chill, bro. I mean, because at first I'm like, it's quick. I'm used to Taioni stopping early fights at the Apex. And maybe he thought it was the Apex. I mean, it's an Apex level card, but beyond that point, Taioni, at first I'm like, oh man, he stopped it too early. But Dom is ragging on Taioni. He's ragging on him bad. And then I see the replay where his hand plops. I'm like, okay, I see why he did it, but it's still bad. And the problem why I think it's still bad is because, and this is the problem I don't like about Dom. Dom is correct in ragging on him and saying, this is why you need refs in there who roll. I may not agree with that thinking entirely, but the part that I'm mad at Dom at is, why didn't he explain, hey, we have seen many judges in that scenario where they know what to do. You know how they know what to do? When Lacerda's hand plops down as though it looks as though he's out, what do refs do? They grab the arm just to check. They grab it. They lift it up. They lift it up just to check. They lift it up. They lift it up maybe a couple times. If that's Herb lifts it up a couple times. If that's Goddard lifts it up a couple times. Any other, name all the other good refs. And they lift up the arm just to check if he's really out, or if there's weight to it, or if his hand pops back up with a thumbs up sign. And that's the part that I wish Dom explained more, and also Tyone fucked up on. So Chairez Lacerda ends in a no contest. You go to the next honorable mention, and this is Godinez versus Reed. This fight ends in a submission in the second round for Godinez. I had this 10-9 for Reed. 10-9 for Godinez. In the first round, real fast-paced. A lot of these fights were fast-paced, especially on the ground. Maybe not on the feet, but on the ground. Godinez outstruck Elise Reed on the feet, and she dropped her. And then also had multiple, and by multiple I mean like two real submission attempts. They credited her with, I forgot what they said they credited her with, like 5 or so. I don't remember, but it was two submission attempts. And yeah, this was another fight on the card that I've watched enough Lupi Godinez fights to know I think her striking is very good. I even scored her winning against Angela Hill, so that should tell you how I think about her striking and what I saw in that fight. But we go to the judges' scorecards. This was just another fight where I thought it would be a little more difficult for her on the feet given the dimensions of Reed, and that turned out not to be the case. Same thing with the main event, where there was a real dumb narrative in the first fight of Shevchenko versus Grasso, where everyone was saying Grasso was outstriking Shevchenko, which just wasn't the case. Even in this particular fight, we'll get to it, Grasso is getting outstruck by Shevchenko on the feet. And it was only acknowledged by the commentary, 4th, 5th round, where the jab was hitting, right? Where they were like, oh, she's really touching up Grasso. But in the last fight, it wasn't acknowledged by no one online, at least. Back to Godinez versus Reed. Mike Bell, here we go again. 10-8. He gives a 10-8 to Godinez. Now, I know some people are going to say, oh, that's definitely a 10-8. It's not a 10-8. She outstrikes her, she drops her, okay, she's winning, blah, blah, blah. They get down there, and it's pretty much just, I'm on you, here's a submission attempt. I'm on you, here's some. There's a lot of that. I don't like this one. I won't give an honorable mention for it, but I don't like it personally. Brian Minner does the same thing, 10-8, and then Saul D'Amato goes conservative, which is a 10-9, and that's the one I agree with. Next honorable mention, this fight, great fight, but this fight pissed me off because there's a way this fight was being talked about, and I even saw some scorecards online. You people are not watching. You're just not watching. Padilla versus Nelson. I had this 30-27 Nelson. Now, at first, I was going to come in here and say, because I was listening to the commentary, and I was like, you know what? I scored the first round wrong. It's actually 10-9 Padilla. And then I watched it, and I was like, no. Nelson is outstriking Padilla. Padilla's missing on a lot of his shots. The jabs that we thought he were landing, he landed a few. He didn't land a lot. Padilla still got outstruck in that first round. The strike numbers lied again. I don't know if I'm not saying that the UFC is intentionally inflating the strike numbers per round, but they're definitely miscounting. And Nelson was outstriking Padilla in that first, but they put up a stat that showed Padilla's winning in the first. All right, cool, whatever. I think Nelson's outstriking him, but whatever. And then on top of that, Nelson's giving out the worst visual ever. There's a couple fights like this where a person's winning, but they give out a terrible visual. A good example, the best example, the most recent example is Anthony Smith, Ryan Spann, round 3, where Ryan Spann is just not throwing anything, and Anthony Smith is basically just winning on points and outstriking Spann, and then every 4 seconds, Anthony Smith covers up his head. It looks bad. It's a very bad visual, but he's winning the fight. I'm thankful that the judges noticed that. In this one, I don't think at least 2 of the judges didn't notice that. Very bad visual for round one. So Nelson outstrikes Padilla on the feet, close on strikes in that first round. And then you go to the second round and the third round. Nelson just outstrikes Padilla in those last two rounds, clear. And you have DC saying it's a close round. It's a close round. In the third, he's saying this. In the third, there's a section in the third round where Nelson is winning clear on Padilla. And DC tries to create this weird narrative where he's like, man, but Padilla's moving really nice. He's closing him down. He's naming stuff that has zero things to do with he is landing on him more than the other guy. And none of that comes out from DC. And this is in the third round, closing the third round. Also saying that Padilla could still win the round when it's like 30 seconds to go and you're getting outstruck clear. It's wild stuff that DC was saying. And then at the end of this round, when the thing was announced, he then goes to him and says, he then goes to Nelson and says, do you think you did enough to win this fight? Crazy. Even though Anik then says in the commentary, but the right guy got the decision, but they still asked that shitty question that I don't like. I feel like they should only ask that during split decisions, even weird split decisions. Like, that should be the only time you ask that, but whatever. Cool. Last two rounds, Nelson outstrikes Padilla, 30-27 on my scorecard. You go to the judges' scorecards, and Mike Bell, he gives the first round to Padilla. Honorable mention there, that's nonsense. In the last two rounds to Nelson. Same thing with Adelaide Bird, gives the first round to Padilla. Again, the visuals in that first round is so weird. Nelson is outstriking Padilla, but still Padilla looks as though he's outstriking Nelson because of just the weird optics. And then Saul Diamanda has it 30-27 to Nelson. We go to the next honorable mention. This is the second to last honorable mention. All right. And this one is Holland versus Maddalena. Split decision win for Maddalena. I had Maddalena winning in the first and the third round. In that very first round, Maddalena outstrikes Holland. It's barely. They're kind of just trading a little bit up until like last minute or so where Maddalena separates himself with a combination. And there you have him in the first round. In the second round, same thing again. It's kind of close on strikes, but Holland also again outstrikes Maddalena. Again, barely in that second round. And then in the third round, they're again trading back and forth, and then Maddalena just separates himself at pretty much towards the end of the round and outstrikes Kevin Holland, 29-28 to Maddalena. You go to the judges' scorecards. Mike Bell gives the first two rounds to Holland. He gives the second round to Holland, that's fine. And then he gives last round to Maddalena. He gives the first round to Holland. Honorable mention there. It is close on strikes, but still, it's clear who's winning that round, and that's Maddalena. Honorable mention to Mike Bell. And then Eric Colon and Saul Diamanda have their scorecards reflect the same, 29-28. Their scorecards reflect mine. And there's that. Now we go to the main event. Grasso versus Shevchenko 2. This fight ends in a split draw. Last championship fight to end in a split draw. Brandon Moreno Figueiredo. My scorecard is 48-47 Shevchenko. Close marker on the fourth round. You can argue the fourth round for Grasso. You can argue the fourth round for Shevchenko. The belt could have gone anywhere, but it ends in a split draw, so whatever. First round, I give the first round to Shevchenko. Second round to Grasso. Third and the fourth round, I give to Shevchenko. And the fifth round obviously goes to Grasso. We'll get to the scorecards in a second. Let me just read off the descriptions real quick. In the first round, Shevchenko outstrikes Grasso on the feet. Okay, Shevchenko gets a takedown, and Grasso was kind of a little active on the bottom, but the first round goes to Shevchenko. You go to the second round where Grasso outstrikes, and she drops Shevchenko on the feet. Shevchenko gets a takedown with some ground and pound, but Grasso's ground and pound from the bottom position was a lot better than Shevchenko's ground and pound on top. That coupled with the fact that she outstruck and she dropped Grasso, and she outstruck Shevchenko on the feet, wins her the round. You go to the second round, and Shevchenko outstrikes Grasso on the feet. This is the narrative thing I was talking about. Even in the last fight, Shevchenko is outstriking Grasso on the feet well. And in the third round, she outstrikes Grasso on the feet, gets a takedown with ground and pound, and she has a submission attempt. And then again in this round, Grasso is also active on the bottom. You go to the fourth round, which is the close round, which is kind of the squeaky round. It's a weird round. You can kind of give it to either person. Shevchenko is outstriking Grasso on the feet again, right? Both of them get a takedown, both in different time spots in the round, but both get a takedown. Shevchenko gets a reversal, so Grasso gets a takedown. I think she gets the first takedown. Shevchenko gets a reversal. Shevchenko then later gets a takedown. This round is close, very close. There's some strikes that people are talking about in this round. There's some strikes that people are talking about where Shevchenko is trying to put her hand on the canvas, and she just couldn't get her fingers to the canvas, and Grasso's landing some knees to the head. And people are saying that's enough to win her this round. I can see the argument, but I feel as though Shevchenko did a lot more still. She outstruck her on the feet. She had the takedown closer to the end. She had the reversal on top of Grasso's takedown. It's an argument. It surely is an argument. And then you go to the fifth round, where all hell breaks loose from a scorecard perspective, but Shevchenko is outstriking Grasso on the feet. She's on her way to winning. Shevchenko goes for a takedown, essentially gets reversed going to the ground, and it's Grasso's takedown. Grasso then lands heavy ground and pound. Now, that ground and pound alone has nullified everything that Shevchenko did on the feet, so it's Grasso's round. She's winning. And then to close out the round, Shevchenko is then on her back, but she's very active on the bottom. Regardless of that point, this is all in all enough to show that this is a 10-9 round for Grasso. You go to the judges' scorecards. Saul D'Amato, his scorecard reflects mine. Junichiro Kamijo, he gives the first to Shevchenko, second to Grasso, third to Shevchenko. He gives the fourth round to Grasso, and then he gives the last round to Grasso. Mike Bell, his scorecard reflects mine, except for the fifth round, which is a 10-8, and this is where the controversy starts. It's an honorable mention. It's bad. It's bad. There's nothing in this round that shows a 10-8. And if he doesn't give a 10-8, again, these 10-8s are ruining things. I don't know who's saying that we should be more liberal with the 10-8s, but I think what they mean is that if the person has won the entire round in a heavy fashion, 10-8. There's nothing in this that shows a 10-8 at all. There's nothing in this that shows a 10-8 at all. The impact of the strikes from when Grasso was on top of Shevchenko is not enough. She was getting outstruck on the feet. At the very most and least, this is a 10-9 for Alexa Grasso. And instead, we get a 10-8, and his scorecard reads 47-47, and that's how we end up in a split draw. Just absolute nonsense. And it's stuff like that where I think my mind goes to, he's looking at his scorecard and goes, oh my God, this is the last action of the fight, and decides, fuck it, we'll just throw a 10-8 in there. That's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's how we get a terrible ending to a really good fight night. A really good fight night only because it wasn't in the Apex. But that's all. That's all I have. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.